In particular, like I think one of the weirdest topics that has popped up amongst wrestling fans recently is this idea that AEW isn't elevating anyone, right? And I'm not naming names. You can all figure out who started this discussion. I'm not doing that. I'm not naming names. You can figure it out. But it's been a whole thing, right? And here's the thing, right? Here's the legitimate thing. Of course, always in my opinion, because but I can say that my opinions are legitimate. They're mine. Okay. I don't think AEW is perfect at it by any means. I don't think any professional wrestling organization books perfectly. I think there's just like it's levels of how bad are they, essentially. That's pretty much it. I really don't think that I really don't think it's a question of whether I think right now we're all grading towards the bottom, right? The curve is very, very low. And I believe that that there is some criticism that is warranted, but I feel like people have very short-term memory on stuff when it comes to Tony Khan in particular, and him being able to elevate guys into a main event spot. While I think he's not perfect by any means, and I think that there are instances where he did absolutely drop the ball on some people, we have a tendency to forget that he elevated to babyface superstar level, the sixth guy in the Bullet Club Elite, and he just elevated that guy to the biggest babyface in his company. He took a guy that the other promotion just passed on, that they didn't latch onto, they didn't see the superstar quality in him, and he made that guy a superstar as well. He decided to belt up a 25-year-old kid, who had no proven track record as a world champion, or even as a star anywhere. I'm talking about MJF in this case. There's other instances. I mean, you can talk about Kyle Fletcher 100%, and there's a lot of good stuff here, but you can talk about some of the fumbles. You can talk about Orange Cassidy. You can talk about, despite the fact that Orange Cassidy, it depends on how you want to look at it when it comes to Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy was a guy who was just a meme wrestler on the indies. Just a joke guy, a guy, like the Dan the Dad and, all the irony wrestlers from the day. And he gets called up and everyone's like, how is this going to translate onto national television? And it turns out Orange was one of the best bets that they did, and they worked him perfectly to become one of the most recognizable faces of the company in an associated act. Now you can say they had the opportunity to truly make a top guy out of Orange Cassidy, but they didn't, right? So, you can perceive that as a fumble. I think like it's a little bit of column A, it's a little bit of column B. But if you ask me, the idea that AEW was able to make this guy, this meme wrestler, this comedy wrestler, into one of the most fan favorite, recognizable acts of the company, that's saying something. This is also a company that belted up Tony Storm, who struggled at the other place to have anything happen. And Tony Khan went completely all in on Tony Storm. Willow Nightingale's another very good example that aren't necessarily top people in the company like her and Orange Cassidy, but nonetheless have become acts that you immediately associate with AEW. Like it's their own talent, right? Look at Powerhouse Hobbs. Powerhouse Hobbs may not have left AEW as a former world champion or, anything to that effect. Not a guy who was up in the upper echelons of the company, but this is a guy that no one knew about, that no one had ever heard of, who was, running the dankest of indies over on the West Coast. I think he was a West Coast guy, right? And then they bring him in, and Tony, nonetheless, even if it wasn't a huge push, was able to elevate him, put him on TV, and put him in a position where he's like, okay, well, I want to go try my luck in WWE, and WWE rubbing their hands together and like, hell yeah, let's go, Like, these are all marks of, like, these are all elevations. So, and I don't know exactly what more you're supposed to say here. This is a promotion that has used guys this is a promotion that has used guys that it's leaned on guys like Chris Jericho, John Moxley, Kenny Omega. These guys were all world champions, all top guys, but were all used in one way or another to try and get new guys over. I think his track record, he being Tony Khan, as far as elevating people, is much better than people today arguing about it give him credit for. I legitimately believe that. And even if it's, because here's the other argument, right, that I've heard, especially talking about this in some of the group chats. It's like, oh, well, a lot of these people that we're talking about here were sure things. Like MJF was a sure thing, right? Look, MJF, I think you had to be blind to not see the talent, right? And what he had to offer. But MJF, previous to going to AEW, was just a guy in MLW and not a champion. He wasn't like the top guy of MLW. He was just a guy there. Well, I mean, just a guy, more than just a guy, but he wasn't exactly their main eventer. He wasn't the guy running the show. He wasn't the main attraction, and Tony essentially got behind MJF and AEW and said, look, you're going to be a star here. You're going to be one of our anchors, one of the pillars, People were telling me, well, Hiroshi Tanahashi said in an interview in 2018 that Hangman Adam Page was a great wrestler and he was destined for great things. Well, isn't that nice? It isn't, like, legitimately, that's nice. And look, Hiroshi Tanahashi, for real, has always had an incredible eye for talent. So, yeah, I mean, okay. So Hiroshi Tanahashi saw it in 2018. Good for him. New Japan did still manage to do jack shit with them. So the talent falls onto Tony's lap. Tony's going to be like, yeah, I'm going to push this guy. And the thing is that none of these guys are necessarily guarantees that they're going to get themselves over. That's the thing. It's not a guarantee that the audience is going to accept these individuals as the top guys. But a combination of these talents being great and some adept booking was able to get these over, right? I don't think anyone looks back at the argument from a couple of years ago now, like with 2020 hindsight, okay? I don't think anyone looks back now to when Will Ospreay came into the company as they were building Swerve Strickland, right? If you recall, there was this whole argument, this whole discussion going on online as to whether or not, Will Ospreay being the hottest, being fucking Will Ospreay. It's like, oh, whatever plans you had for the world title, scrap them and strap up Will, right? But no, Tony held the course with Swerve so that Swerve could win his first world championship and even beat Will in a championship match. So it's like, you look back on it now And that was absolutely the right move, to get another guy up there, Swerve, to get another guy up there, so that so you'd have, one of these where Tony could have another top guy, another credible top guy, to help push the company forward as a superstar. And now you just have Will waiting in the wings to come back, and every AEW fan is just champing at the bit for Will Ospreay to return at this point. So, it's like, you can have the talents, but you have to be able as a booker to book these talents well. We know of another company who has extremely talented pro wrestlers, but somehow, oftentimes, fails to put these people over, fails to get these extremely talented wrestlers over with their crowd, or they do a half-assed job of it. Multiple examples I'm sure popping into your heads right now. And that's what makes a booker. So you can have the greatest talent in the world, but if you fumble how he's presented, how he's turned into a top guy, well, then that's a legitimate problem. So no matter what the level of superstar you have, if you can't handle them, it's all going to fall flat on your face. So I didn't want to talk about it, but there you go. I just did a 15-minute rant about it, maybe even 20. I don't know. But that's the thing. And look, like I said, I want to be super clear. There are people that I think Tony was completely off base with, that I think Ricky Starks is a great example of that as well, where there was no real follow-up to all of the great stuff that he was doing. And next thing you know, he's in a tag team with Big Bill. No disrespect to Big Bill, but Ricky Starks wasn't meant to be a tag team wrestler. The Ray Phoenix singles run was something that should have happened. I think Ray Phoenix would have 100% been a tippy top guy in his company. I legitimately believe that. Those are just a couple coming off of the top of my head here, but I'm sure if you think about it, there's other examples of, Tony. I think Daniel Garcia is a flub. They're not all going to be successes, but to sit here and say, to get behind a microphone and say with conviction and verve that AEW doesn't elevate people is preposterous, because there's evidence of that multiple times that it's happened. In more occasions, I would argue it happened more often than what the other guys do. But I think this is a circumstance of certain podcasters having their favorites and seeing that their favorites are not getting pushed, and then suddenly getting upset that their favorites are not getting pushed. Overall, that's what I think it is, right? So, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. That's not the idea. It's not a question of that. I think it's look, everyone is opinions are like nostrils. Everybody has them, right? Yes, I know the expression is something else, but it's kind of cliched, and I wanted to try out something else. The other, whoever said this is entirely entitled to their opinion, and it's fine. Like, they can it's absolutely their prerogative, right? But sometimes it's like an opinion can stray on the side of being wrong when it's clearly identified as, when you can clearly poke holes in it and say, no, it's wrong because this. Have you considered this and that and whatnot? So I don't know. I also think that sometimes when you're a wrestling podcaster, it's okay to take breaks to reinvigorate your love of what you're spending your career talking about. I also think that's something important, It's something that I would 100% do. If I ever turn into, a pure curmudgeon and I'm just upset at everything and I don't like it and so on and so forth, I just like, okay, you know what? We're going to take a break. And maybe I'll do live streams, but we'll talk about comic books instead. We'll talk about how to make a great stew instead. I'll just step away from it for a while, find the love again, and then come back. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I really, really don't. TK's biggest issue is he doesn't always pull the trigger on things when he should, but overall, TK and AEW have been far better at booking and creative over WWE and most other promotions. I think anyone complaining about AEW not elevating people has not watched New Japan over the past 2 years. 2024 and particularly 2025 New Japan, it's bash your head against the wall bad. Tony AEW has never fully put the rocket ship on anyone. The logo comes first. I hope that changes with Ospreay's title change. I mean, what is the rocket strap? Just to be clear. And I'm not trying to be nasty here, Boris. That's not but like, because I feel like it means something different to a lot of people, where the rocket strap is like, immediately make this person like, the minute this person shows up on TV, like to me, okay, this person debuts on your TV and you strap them up and you push them to the moon, kind of thing, right? A Kazuchika Okada returning from excursion Kazuchika Okada type of thing, right? I think that's my definition of the rocket strap. But see, I don't think a guy like Will Ospreay was not rocket strapped when he came in. I think, hang on a second. Because Will is Will, and Will was okay to losing to everyone, right? That's how he is. He was still always involved in big time angles and a lot of important stuff, and he's going to be doing it again this year with Callum Newman over in New Japan. Is this a guy you need to rocket strap? Because people are just going to be like excited for him regardless. Darby, look at how much Darby was elevated from an extreme nobody. This is, but yeah, okay. I'd put him like around, like in an Orange Cassidy boat. I'd put him in an Orange Cassidy boat. And if people are waiting for, because I think elevation for a lot of people just means world championship. And I guess to a degree, but you can be elevated out of nowhere and have a really solid mid-card spot, upper mid-card and whatnot, and still be an attraction and people be excited to see your matches. I think that's also an elevation. TK's biggest strength is tag team matchmaker. Hell yeah. That I think is going to be his legacy. Tony has his company face in Adam Page or Ospreay or even Mox. He's got, or even Swerve. He's got guys. Very hot baby faces, Jay White had a rocket strap in New Japan. Kyle Fletcher feels the same in AEW. Jay White did have a bit of a rocket strap, didn't he? It's like everyone wants this to happen within 6 months, or within 3 months. And then it's like, but I appreciate, I'm in no rush. And I prefer that we set things up nice and naturally. Like, if you don't think, like Kyle Fletcher, right, is an excellent example. If you don't think Kyle Fletcher is going to be a world champion in this company, you're delusional. Like, they gave him a shot last year, right, with the Hangman, and he failed, as he should, because this was his first time in a big time world championship match, and he was just bettered by the champ. Then he's going to get better still, and he's going to learn some more. And the next time he gets a title shot, he's going to come across as a little more serious. He's not going to come across as a goofball. He's going to come across as a little more seriously. You're going to look at Kyle Fletcher, and you're going to be like, hey, maybe this kid has something, right? Could be. And you see, you could wonder with Konosuke Takeshita, what is he going to do with Takeshita? I think for a while, Look, I'll be curious to see what they do with an inevitable babyface push for Konosuke Takeshita, because I still think that's absolutely in the cards. I think that's something that's going to happen. And if done right, I think a babyface soup could absolutely enter the realm of top guys there in AEW. Will he work out? Well, that'll be a question that we'll have to see, but at least we'll have tried, right? Look, it's like what they're doing with Chris Statlander, right? If I were in Tony Khan's shoes, I would do the exact same thing with Chris Statlander. I would have tried it out. I was like, okay, I got to get the belt off of Tony because we just got to keep things fresh, and I'm going to try to elevate someone else. Now, is Chris Statlander being elevated successfully or not? I think that's still up for debate, but I'm just, I'm not ready I'm not ready to crucify it. Like, I'm not sitting here saying it's great. I'm not saying it's terrible. I'm just saying, I'm not feeling it, but I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's great either, but at least he's trying. And you have to commend that at least we're giving it the old college try here. And there's a lot of it that falls upon the talent as well. There's all sorts of circumstances, right? Because if it was so easy to get people over in pro wrestling, everyone would be a megastar. Am I right? Am I right?